This title is currently undersung as an intriguing detector of viewer priorities in the 2020s thus far. There are those who champion this as the kind of comic book, superhero, or masked vigilante action flick that they always wanted. There are those who will be appalled because it is not the Infinity Gems mistakes, perhaps. Others have so much disgust for film violence that they consider something like this to be an act of abuse in a world which ought to strive for ethical engulfing of all of our felt neuro impulses. Every individual ought to be utterly terrified as to whether any inclination they feel is initially ethical, a notion which I have a more nuanced feeling toward. One ought to be measured and generally hesitant to demand any shame in others without the conviction to defend the claim, at least. Still, there are similar others who have so much disdain for the live-action superhero films and or geek cultural entertainment in general that they dislike this more, perhaps because the really dedicated enthused of that geek continuum were or are so insistent about this being so much superior to, say, the MCU or other DCEU material. My own position is really closest to the first listed audience hypothetical, yet it may be vaguely independent of the Suicide Squad being a superhero or masked vigilante work. This feels like the kind of film which many advocates of intensely sordid and splatter-oriented imagination have desired for 2 or more decades, finally actually receiving it. That comic books, the only medium to engage so recklessly in such creative graphic violence, along with anime and internet flash cartoons, would inspire such a film is perhaps inevitable, and the visual priorities of comic books, superpowered individuals carrying these stories at that, do lend themselves to a piece which is kinetic and over the top and stylized gore for its own sake. I'm going to defend the existence of a film like this, and hyperactive animated film violence in general. It bothers certain people enough, has them wanting to repress urges in our cultural canvas so much, but I have to assume that media such as this is doing something quite right. I don't like the vision of society proposed by those who condemn this film, not those who simply don't care for it. This is fairly trivial. The prioritization of abstracted discourse for its own sake versus a passionate analysis of our own human preferences and impulses. This leads to the disintegration of motivation and the curation of depression. My energy in life is sourced from a desire. That desire is to dissolve, decompose any traces of predatory depression. What violent media can, think impossibilities, not absolutes for once, try it, do, is re-augment the concept of violence into something less frightening and traumatic, yet still serious and horrifying, so that one knows what to expect from aggressive human behavior, developing a nurse or vet's detached disposition toward blood and other fluids. They learn or corral and maintain the enjoyment of such depictions with an understanding of what it is like, a distinguishment between the primeval Paleolithic interest in clubbing the other chap, and simply in realizing the prospective grace and energy of two entities in a battle. Horror assists us in grappling with the concept of fear in our lived existences, and I consider such deployments of over-the-top film violence to exist in a similar consideration. I guarantee you that actual sadists don't enjoy films such as this. They consider this stuff to be for people they would decry as gay or as just enthusiastic in general, the worst thing anyone can be according to most people under 40. This film is for those of us who have acknowledged our innate tendencies to violence, the Neelian Martian, the back of all of our simian brains, moved past them, channeled them into appreciating, or initially composing, an impassioned arrangement of stylized violence for the sake of advocating these unexpected heroics. It is for those of us who want to be honest with ourselves, don't consider ourselves superior to other humans because of what impulses we want to impress others by repressing within our pathologies. We want to believe in our capacity to create art which has nothing to do with an actual moral apparatus. Surely if we can accept a film such as this whilst not questioning our own unequivocal condemnation of real-world violence, we have come further than a society which might be constantly worrying about whether one, the art, will influence the other, the life, do negatively. The fact is that those who worry about it are not confident in their own ability to gauge morality without a wider social consensus. They worry if they would be violent if they enjoyed films such as this. They lack wider confidence. have the self-confidence to understand that you can distinguish between cartoonish fare like this and real-world violence, and then you'll subsequently understand that a vast majority of others do too. And I promise you that actual violent people don't watch colourful heroic action fare intended for older teenagers, even if the dominant colour in such a vibrant affair is that of human blood red.